Uh, Excuse me. Sorry.
Nice.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Batfeed, your source for Batman news, lore, and so much more. I'm Jake,
And I'm Noah.
and we're going to be talking about our thoughts on the Snyder Cut. Already got my shirt here. So, right off the bat, what were your thoughts on it, Noah? Like, versus the original one?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed this one. As a disclaimer, I'm usually the kind of person who enjoys movies more than not, and oftentimes need to think about it a bit before I find some criticism with movies. But I've been thinking about this one a lot in the last couple days since we watched it, and I really did enjoy this one a lot. I think that there were a lot of holes that it filled in that the other one had, not just from a story perspective, but from just a storytelling perspective as well, when it comes to character development and those kinds of things, which just it seamlessly kind of flowed together throughout the whole thing. So yeah, what about you? What did you think? Initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think I mentioned something about this before when we were talking over over Discord, but it was really cool that the Justice League, the one that we now can no longer have to talk about, that was one thing. Zack Snyder's original vision for Justice League is another thing, and it's almost like the Snyder cut that we got was the best of both, but also something new, because the new budget gave him room to kind of do new things that he wasn't going to originally or didn't have the resources for.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I really liked it. And yeah, I would agree. They fixed a lot of plot holes that the original one just kind of breezed over or didn't think was important. It was cool to see some of the older scenes start to spill over into the new narrative.
Yeah, and yet still have a slightly shifted tone. Even Barry Allen was introduced and was telling some jokes and that kind of thing. I noticed that there's this kind of, the music in the background was a bit more intense. I just chuckled when we were watching it because I was they totally tried to keep that scene because people enjoyed that scene of kind of how he met Barry.
Yeah.
But make it a bit more serious, it wasn't so kind of forced comedic and kind of, so I laughed when I kind of noticed that, but no, it was good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think we both did this because we talked about that too, but we kind of while we were watching the movie took note of highlights for us and I guess lowlights or whatever another better word is for that. Yeah, because I would definitely say there was more good than bad, but there were still some things that I was kind of huh? It feels like on the internet there's two camps. There's either you're a Zack Snyder fanatic or you're absolutely opposed and hated it or whatever, and I'm somewhere in the middle. What were some of your biggest highlights throughout the entire thing?
Some of the biggest things, I think, for me on kind of an overarching line was just the amount of character development that we got in this one that we didn't in the previous version, from Steppenwolf to Cyborg to Flash to, we got to see flashback scene, I guess, of the first time that Darkseid came to Earth, and that that whole thing was all stretched out in this movie, which in the last one, it was there was this flashback sequence, but it was 30 seconds long or something. I don't know. I don't know exactly, but it was quick. And yeah, this one, I feel they went into much more detail with what that was. And so there was more gravity too. First of all, it actually explained kind of what the mother boxes were, which was great. That was one of my kind of criticisms with the last one. Wait, what even are these things? And why should I care about it? And they didn't really get into it as much as, maybe it should have. And so, that kind of thing is hard because then it's well, then as a viewer, why do I care about the conflict that's happening then if I don't even understand the consequences of it? Yeah, so I think the biggest kind of overarching things were getting to see individual characters grow throughout the movie. There was a very clear character growth in Aquaman, for example. There was this kind of at the beginning, he was just this kind of get away from me, I'm doing my own thing, I don't really care about anyone else kind of a thing, to all right, I'm going to step up and I'm going to take some responsibility and I'm going to really lean into this leadership role that I have. So things like that. There's some really good kind of character development that I noticed with each character that I really enjoyed to see, and that made the 4 hours seem not so long.
Yeah, that was one of my highlights too. Overall, was just the overall pacing of the movie was much better. The way that the mother boxes were the intro instead of before. I didn't know this until recently, but the whole opening scene in the theatrical release of Justice League with Batman chasing down the parademon and that thug, and 1 minute Batman's interrogating this thug and hanging him over the edge of a building, and the next minute they're just having a casual conversation about an impending alien invasion. This doesn't make any sense. I didn't realize this, but Joss Whedon wrote that entire sequence and wanted that to be the intro. I'm just glad they took it out. They put the mother boxes first because it's like, okay, this is the story we want to focus on.
I also really enjoyed how at the beginning it was like that it was Superman's scream from the last movie, you know, from Batman vs. Superman, that awoke the mother boxes, and then because of that, there was this kind of missing piece in the last movie of like, why now? You know, like, why did the mother boxes come alive? Or it didn't feel like there was a like satisfying connection. Whereas in this one with the intro where you could like see like the sound waves of his voice like going all throughout the world almost, and you could see the mother boxes. I thought that was brilliant, and I thought it tied in so well with Man of Steel to Batman vs. Superman to Justice League, and like tying the three together is kind of a theme too throughout this movie that I noticed, and I appreciated the continuity between them and how they really paid attention to it. It seemed like much more.
One of the things that I liked about it was the way it was split up into parts, because going into that, I think I remembered hearing somewhere online he was going to be doing that. It gave it a very book-like quality that was pretty cool, and it was like, okay, you could almost get away with like watching a couple parts, going and doing something else, and then like picking it back up, and like a chapter book. I thought that was really cool.
And a great way to split up a movie that's so long, and to keep the person watching actually engaged, because there is this sequential like, you know, okay, now we're on to the next part.
Yeah. One of the funny things I noticed was how frequently there are fedoras in this movie.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
I made a list. When Bruce, after he finishes talking to Aquaman, he gets to the airport and Alfred's waiting there for him, and he's wearing like this giant coat and like a fedora, and I was like, that's super cool, because Jeremy Irons is just like super styling. He's like an older version of Robert Downey Jr. or something. I was like, that's cool. And then like the next major scene is Wonder Woman in the museum or wherever it is with the
bank
guy.
Isn't it? Yeah. Or is it yeah, I don't know. Either way, yeah.
They have the bomb.
Yeah, and he has a fedora. Yeah.
He has a fedora. And then after she like takes him out, his fedora is just like floating down on the wind. And then much later in the movie is a scene that's like Flash is like trying on different hats, and Aquaman's giving him like his opinion. I was like, what's going on here with this like hat theme? But
I really appreciated not only getting to see everyone's backstory a bit more so that we knew kind of where they were coming from and it set up their character arc, but the first attack that they had, like against Steppenwolf, was so disjointed and all over the place. Yeah. And they did that kind of in the last version, but I felt like this one like took it to a new level. They just had no idea how to work as a team. It was great because, you know, you got to start from somewhere, right? And these are all people who have never worked together before, and they all have their own styles. I thought that they did a great job of how kind of messy and disjointed that first battle sequence was.
Kind of like bouncing off of that a little bit, how in the Justice League they didn't really have a fighting chance against Steppenwolf until Superman showed up, which was kind of a weak excuse for like why they weren't able to beat him. The whole disjointed team thing makes way more sense because they've never worked together, and like Bruce may have good intentions but also doesn't know how to lead a team. It's like, okay, it's kind of chaotic, but like from the get-go with this new movie was like when the Amazons were fighting him, he had like arrows sticking out of him all over the place. I was like, oh, so they can actually injure him even if they can't like kill him necessarily. Yeah,
that was something that I wrote down as we were watching it, because I felt like last time he just kind of shows up and then all the Amazons are just kind of like, you know, and then like that's it, and he's got the box. It's like, what? You know, this time it really did seem like they actually stood their ground for longer, and he still, you know, got it in the end. But it did feel a lot more like, aren't they supposed to be like the Amazons, you know? And they were a bit more beastly in this movie, and like definitely gave him a run for his money. That leads right into the note that I made, and going back to character kind of like continuity, that they showed how Wonder Woman found out about this with the arrow and them, you know, shooting the arrow into the monument. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but that was not in the last one at all. And she just kind of like was like, well, this is a big deal now, and then kind of joined the team. And it was like, we're just joining because of like Bruce and to be like helpful, or like, you know, what's the deal here? And that was a really cool explanation, because it also like like reminded the audience that it's not like she sees any of these people anymore. You know, like her sisters, she's cut off from them. And so this is like an extra big deal that they went out of their way to warn her that there's this thing that's coming and all. And so it just added this extra gravity of like, oh gosh, this is important.
It's not even something as simple as like saying, oh, it's the bow of Artemis and it'll reach the mainland. That makes way more sense already, because just needed a tiny little explanation that it was like a bow and arrow that belonged to a goddess, and now I'm okay with the fact that they shot an arrow like thousands of miles across an ocean.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially since we saw the gods fighting in the scene before.
We got a close-up of that Green Lantern too. That was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, when he lost his ring. Yeah, it was intense.
You could tell which parts of it made the movie R-rated as opposed to the PG-13 theatrical release. There's limbs and hands and stuff flying everywhere.
Yeah.
I was kind of a fan of how, I mean, they still used the whole Unity thing with the mother boxes, but they like minimized its role a lot more. Because I know I've been pretty vocal about how dumb I think that was. The mother boxes are these, literally what they are is they're sentient technology that can teleport you across the universe, or like do things like they did to Cyborg, where it like gives him cybernetic enhancements. It's technology, but it's not like a doomsday weapon necessarily. I feel like they just needed some kind of doomsday weapon, so they're like, oh, we'll just make the mother boxes that. And then there was the whole thing with like Steppenwolf being supercharged around it. It's like, why is he supercharged? I don't know. They kind of explained it a little bit.
So yeah, I was kind of confused with that stuff too. I didn't know what the mother boxes were before Justice League, or before, you know, like, because I haven't read those stories. And this time they at least gave a better explanation. But yeah, even the Unity thing was kind of confused me.
There's so much else already pre-existing in the comics as far as New Genesis technology, but they latched onto the mother box thing, and it was like, okay, that's the easiest thing, because that's going to be a big part of the story. It's the easiest thing to, I guess, kind of adapt.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like at some point, enough is enough, and they just have to kind of, you know, like mother boxes were already going to be kind of there because of Cyborg's introduction, so they needed to be able to say something about this. So it makes sense that they're kind of like, let's just make those into, even though it maybe wasn't the perfect thing to do for continuity. Oh well.
It is what it is, and I think overall it was okay, and I love the movie. Let's talk about Darkseid. Do you have any highlights in regards to him?
I liked that he existed in this one. I remember hearing that, oh yeah, the villain that was actually in the original Justice League, like, wasn't the intended villain originally and all that. And I was like, that's weird, like what? But right, I haven't read these comics, so like I didn't really know who Darkseid was or who Steppenwolf was. So it was great to see that there was this kind of, for Steppenwolf, it was like he's trying to get his place back, and Darkseid is just like the big bad. I don't know. I feel like it made Steppenwolf's character much more believable to have Darkseid there, even though we didn't really interact much at all with Darkseid. We got an idea for like how powerful he was and how important he was, and I think that that's all we needed for this movie.
I was loving just how much justice Zack did to his character without doing like a huge info dump on top of all the information that was already there. He just like revealed bits and pieces that any diehard comic fan is like, oh yeah, Darkseid. But there's like, like I remember you saying like when they showed Darkseid kind of like ready to come through the boom tube and everything. He had Desaad with him, but he also had like some random old lady with like a bunch of Viking armor. And you were like, who's that? And I was like, oh yeah, that's Granny Goodness. But like, you've read some of the comics, but somebody who hasn't read like the major ones with Apocalypse and Darkseid is going to be like, who the heck is that old lady?
You know, you have to choose your battles, right? When there's so much content you can pick from with all the comics, and you know, and trying to make a good movie and tie just enough stuff together. And so I think that what they did was good, providing enough of like a who is this guy to really support the main villain of the movie, which was Steppenwolf, of course, because he was the one on Earth who they were interacting with. But it also made me excited to see more about that story.
When Cyborg had like the vision that he had when he was, I can't remember, I don't think it was when he was trying to separate the mother boxes, but maybe before that, he had a vision that kind of showed Darkseid in the future conquering the Atlanteans and the Amazons and stuff like that. And specifically the Atlanteans, he had his Omega beams. Basically, Superman's laser vision, but they can turn and go separate ways. And I was like, oh my gosh, he just dropped that. Any Darkseid fans will know what that is immediately. And also, just kind of like near the end, how as soon as that plan was like off the table, Darkseid was just like, plan B.
Yeah.
We're just gonna do it the old way.
Seriously. Yeah, he's like, shoot, the new tech didn't work. All right, well, we'll just invade. It really gave you this gravity of like, oh wow, okay, this is a big deal. Yeah, so let's talk about the ending. So I really appreciated, first of all, when they brought Superman back, that was pretty much the same as before in terms of how the plot laid out, except that I kind of liked that Lois was there by accident rather than in the other one. It was like Batman had like called her basically, and I liked the idea of like she had this routine and she was going and she was standing there. Like it made sense and it felt more real, and the process of grief, and you connected more with her character because of that. But I liked that. But then one thing that I really liked was when he goes back to his ship and you hear both of his dads, his Earth dad and his space dad, talking to him, and like these lines that we've heard in the previous movies, but like it was all coming together, and I just thought that they did it so well. I thought it was a great callback. I thought it was really, I almost started like getting a little emotional while I was watching that, just because it was like this is what I loved about Man of Steel, and like that Superman feels really like human, which, you know, is kind of an incredible and impressive thing to be able to do in a movie because he's literally an alien. Yeah, I just thought that was great. I really enjoyed that. Kind of pumped him up for the ending battle. Started as a Superman movie with Superman and then Batman and Superman and then the Justice League, but like Superman was still at the core of all that, and so it was good to see. It's not like he just came back and then was like, oh, I gotta help, and then like defeated the bad guy and we're good, you know? Yeah, other thoughts about that or the ending in general?
Yeah, they definitely tied it together so much better, and the fact that we finally got to see like the third installment in that trilogy. I love it when the third installment ties into the first and second.
You can have good fan service, but like ultimately I'm going to a movie to be entertained, and so if I can enjoy the story throughout multiple stories, I don't think that it's automatically just like cheating to call back to a previous work that you've done or something like that. I think it's actually impressive to be able to do it in a way that is good and not kind of a cop-out. I also had, I was thinking about, I really enjoyed how Barry basically saved the day. He was so timid in the beginning. He was trying to make his way through the world, and I thought that Ezra Miller did a good job portraying like his character and some different sides of his character, and how he kind of used humor to almost ignore the stuff that he didn't want to pay attention to, which is like totally a thing that people do. And so I thought his character was nice and relatable. But what kind of was the icing on the cake for me in this movie was the fact that really it was because of him that the entire story, he saved everyone. And really that was the main thing about this movie that I liked, was that it wasn't just we have to hold off Steppenwolf until we bring Superman back from the dead and then he saves the day. They really all had to come together, and it was everyone ended up saving the day by the end of the story. Like they couldn't have done it without any of them, and that's the most important part I think for this kind of mashup movie where there's a bunch of characters, is like you don't want to have a bunch of characters where you feel you want to try and give them some real gravity, some real stakes in the game.
He like alluded to the fact that when he runs fast enough, time gets weird.
Mm-hmm.
And he rewound time with the mother box hitting the water, which was like a tiny thing, and then it ended up just straight up being the way that he saved the day, because the unity happened and the like incineration of the world began, or whatever, the terraforming. You see him run as fast as he can, and he starts to reverse time all the way up until like the source of the explosion, and you see Cyborg re-atomize and Superman's like exploded flesh coming back together, and you're just like, holy crap, Superman like freaking died.
Yeah,
it's like, okay,
the most
this
powerful
is
person.
A serious threat, but here's Flash like reversing time. Totally sets up for the Flashpoint movie, or just the Flash movie, whatever the case is going to be, that he can do this. He's already made a surprise appearance on the Flash TV show. That's been pretty cool. So they're like going to explain that, they've said, in the Flash movie.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited for that.
I don't got much else, but I did want to go back to like Bruce and Alfred's relationship. It was cool to see their interaction kind of throughout the movie, because Alfred, while being more of like a side character in this, was still like very much necessary to the story, because until Bruce had his team, Alfred was his support. I was laughing my head off when Wonder Woman was making tea and Alfred was like hovering over her shoulder like, there's a right way to do it. Shout out to any of our fans from the UK that are watching this. And then maybe like right before the big final battle, Bruce and Alfred's like heart to heart, where Bruce is like in his groove and he's like getting ready and preparing, and Alfred kind of walks up and like gets his attention and he's like, hey, listen, this may not be a great idea. It's just a classic. Alfred doesn't like not trust Bruce or not believe in him. You know, he's like his father. He has full faith in his son that he's able to do what needs to be done, but he also cares about him and he doesn't want to see him die the same way that his parents were murdered. And
he knows that he's reckless, and he knows that he does know him very well.
So it was just cool to see like, okay, Alfred really, even after all the crap that Ben Affleck's Batman has been through with being like blatantly killing criminals with the Batmobile and almost killing Superman, and he's been in some dark places, but Alfred hasn't lost faith in him. It's like, I care about you and I don't want you to die, and also I don't want you to have all these people killed, you know? It ended on a hopeful note, and it ended like, you see him when Superman comes back and Alfred's like, you said you would come. He was like, by that point you could see he knew that they were gonna save the day. What were your thoughts on Martian Manhunter?
I thought it was cool. I had heard things on the internet of people speculating for the last few years that was going to be a thing, and so when it was, I was like, oh yeah. I thought it was interesting how they kind of tied him in with him being Clark's mom to go and talk to Lois. I guess, you know, that does end up tying in, because then that's what gets Lois to going into her daily routine again, and then being there when Superman needed her to be. But it was cool, and one of those great tiebacks, of course, again, to Man of Steel, with that, you know, iconic scene in that movie where he and Superman are just looking at each other through the one-way glass, and it's just like, it just kind of sends like a chill down your spine when you watch it. But it's even cooler to think that like, but that's secretly Martian Manhunter. And he looked cool too. I thought that they did I thought that the actual CG for his character was, I liked it. It was different, but I liked it.
They kept his face shape and chin shape, and I was grateful for that, because, oh gosh, I don't remember the actor's name for General Swanwick, but he's like a good looking dude. So it's like, at least he looks recognizable.
Yeah, I appreciate when they can sneak in there the kind of character design influenced by the actor.
What did you think about the nightmare sequence? It was kind of interesting to see, like, a lot of people thought it was going to be a larger part of the movie, maybe even the last hour of the movie, but it's almost like they took the same route that they did in Batman vs. Superman and made it another premonition that Bruce was having. But yeah, what were your overall thoughts on that little sequence?
It piqued my interest a lot, because I don't usually love the kind of fast forward, look ahead, here's where we're at, because then I'm like, okay, well, they're kind of just like, that's almost like an easy way to set up the next story. Okay, well, now they just have to write the script so that it ends with whatever I thought it was interesting. I'm very curious as to why Joker was there with them and what the deal was. Obviously, Superman being the bad guy, you know, like it all tied into the same stuff. So it does seem like it's supposed to be like in the future that, you know, 2 months later when Darkseid comes back and he invades, and then it seems like something happens to Lois and then Superman basically turns evil. Who knows? And they alluded to that too, and Bruce was like talking about like, you know, Barry like came to me in this kind of dream and he said Lois Lane is the key, and he's like, but I feel like it's more than this, you know, because like that was after she had kind of showed up when Superman was coming back, and it kind of left like a what taste in your mouth. So I'll be interested to see, obviously, who knows if there's going to be more plans with that in the future. I thought it was kind of out there, so that's why I'm glad that they made it the epilogue. You know, it wasn't supposed to be. They weren't trying to explain it. They were just trying to tease where things are going.
I was laughing when the epilogue thing popped up. I was like, I bet this is literally just going to be like a giant post-credit. I'm exaggerating when I say this, but there were like 6 different post-credits mashed together in there. The one we saw in the original Justice League with like Deathstroke and Lex Luthor, although that was fleshed out a little more. And then it was cool to see Deathstroke again, always, because Deathstroke is badass. But yeah, and then the nightmare sequence, and then Bruce interacting with Martian Manhunter for the first time. I like Jared Leto's Joker. I actually think, like, as far as apart from like the tattoos and the train wreck that was Suicide Squad, I think that he was one of my favorite parts about that movie still. And his new look was cool to an extent. The bulletproof vest with all the different police badges, presumably from people that he killed, was intense, and he looks cool with the long hair. And
it also is almost a callback to that one comic. Kind of reminded me of that.
Oh,
Do you
Batman
know the name? Yeah, there you go.
Harley being dead, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit.
Yeah, Harley, it was just a strange thing between the two of them.
Yeah.
At the end there, they were almost just like snapping a little bit, like not in a physical way, but like in like a mental way. And it was like almost uncomfortable to watch, because you could see that these two like men who had been through so much and were so broken and were trying to just continue to hurt each other. It was just like hard, but it was interesting and kind of creepy, but that was also, I think, kind of the point. They had some cool cinematography things in that too, with Joker. Some of the times when they kind of went on him, the lens was all blurry, and they had a lot of cool cinematography things throughout. The 4:3 aspect ratio I wrote down, enjoying that.
My favorite thing out of that whole sequence, you're like, how far gone is Batman for him to be like, Harley made me promise that I would kill you, and then he goes, and I will fucking kill you. And he's
it was like,
I would do it slow.
Oh,
and I was like,
yeah.
Oh, like in the first nightmare sequence in BVS, he was like using handguns and automatic weapons and just gunning people down. So it's like, that's one thing, but he doesn't care anymore because the world has gone to shit, essentially.
Yeah, that's why I kind of hope that that's like a alternate timeline thing, because I feel like we've never seen Batman like to that point, and so I hope that it's like this is what happens if things go wrong, but hopefully they don't go wrong, you know.
I'm wondering what they're going to do with that. Like, it would be almost for the Flashpoint movie to be like, we see a little bit of modern day Central City with Barry Allen living his life. Maybe we see a little bit of the Nightmare sequence, and maybe the reason that Flashpoint happens is because Nightmare Barry Allen runs back and changes everything.
Or maybe something happens that he sees that. And he's like, oh shoot. Yeah, no, I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see, but I'm excited.
Yeah, this definitely feels like a win overall. Yeah, my only major issue with the movie, and I think I mentioned this, was like the whole Atlantean part of it was full of continuity errors. As far as that was supposed to come out when Justice League came out, so it would have been like defining for like where the Aquaman movie went. But in ZSJL, you got Mira, and she's got like a British accent, which she doesn't have in Aquaman. And then she's talking about how both her parents are dead when her dad is alive in Aquaman. Normal Atlanteans being able to breathe outside of water without some kind of like breathing apparatus was another thing, because they were very clear about like, if you're nobility, you can breathe out of water if you're an Atlantean. But part of the reason they were able to defeat some of the Atlantean soldiers attacking them is because they broke their breathing apparatus and knocked all the water out, or they suffocated or whatever. I would just love for them to elaborate more on that. But that was just a few loose ends that I was kind of like, I hope they explain that in the future, or that we just don't address it again, because that's a few comments.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be watching it again. I've only seen it the once so far, and I'm like, okay, I watched it, I took a bunch of notes, but now I kind of want to just sit back and enjoy it, because I did love it. I would say overall, I give it like a 9 out of 10 on my scale as far as superhero movies.
I would probably give it a 7 or 8 out of 10, because I enjoyed it a lot, but also I feel like the original one I would have given like a 4 out of 10. I don't know. It was the original one was like mostly not good with some good moments, and it's like, you don't really want a show to be, you want it to be like mostly great with some moments that were a little iffy. And this one was like, for what they did, it would have worked better if they could just kind of restart and go back in time and like make this movie how it was supposed to be and split it up into 2 movies. The fact that it was 4 hours was harder, and the fact that I enjoyed this movie for what it is. I enjoyed it. Like, could it have been better if things had like yeah, I'm sure. But for what it is and kind of the bumps in the production that we got, I enjoyed it a lot. But I think this is definitely one to put on the shelf.
It's going to be coming out on Blu-ray in the near future. So I'm a traditionalist. I'll be buying that when it comes out.
You should print it on VHS. I might.
Retro, even though we both remember a time when there was just VHS.
You would have to have 6 VHS tapes for a 4-hour movie. Each part is a new one. You just gotta wait for it to rewind. It's good, just wait.
Yeah, so if you guys stick around on Monday, we're going to be doing a live stream to kind of follow up to this. It's going to be our normal This Week in Gotham segment. Noah will be joining in too. And if you guys have any questions for us about the Snyder Cut, about stop motion project, join us for that. It'll start at 11 a.m. EST. All right, well, that about wraps it up. And I want to thank you all for joining us. Hope you all are having a good day. We just like making these videos for you because we're just a couple of fans of Batman, and we like making stuff by the fans for the fans. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and remember, the night is always darkest before the dawn, and I promise you the dawn is coming. Peace out, y'all.
Yeah.